Hi, this is Ryan from RapidweaverClassroom.com, and I'd like to introduce you to the Power Grid stack from Joe Workman. Power Grid enables you to add HTML-based tables that are very flexible, and you can style these without any knowledge of CSS. And so you can see in this example that we've got a basic table created with Power Grid that displays upcoming events, and there are 4 columns with 3 rows of content and 1 header row. And so Power Grid supports header rows, which you can see here in the blue, and then it also allows for rollover effects as you go down the content of the Power Grid stack. And so let's take a look at the edit mode where we'll see how this is all put together. First, I've got my Power Grid body stack. Power Grid comes with both the body stack and the Power Grid row stack, and you can find these both in your library once they're installed. In order to utilize Power Grid, you first need to add the body stack and then place the row stacks inside of it, and you have spaces presented for your rows if you select the number of rows in the stacks HUD for the Power Grid body stack. And so there are a tremendous number of rows available. You can go all the way up to 60 rows of stacks. And so if I go back down just a bit, we'll take a look here, and if I scroll down, you'll see the open slots for more row stacks. You would just simply grab your row stack and drop it into the space and then customize the rows. And so while we're looking at the row stack, let's look real quick at the inspector HUD for it. It's very basic and simple. 2 options. One is the number of columns for the stack, and then whether or not it is a header column. My header column stack is located above right here in this space, and so if I were to click into the inspector HUD for that stack, you would find that header column is selected, and then I've got the number of columns set to 4. It makes the most sense, of course, to have all of your rows stacks set to use the same number of columns, and so these 3 that I'm utilizing in this case all have 4 columns set. Again, that is through the inspector for the row stack itself, and just with the slider you set the number of columns that you would like to utilize. So let me go back into the body stack itself, and we'll go and scroll down to the 3 rows that I'm currently utilizing. Next, we have the option to use the header row, which I do. If you disable that, that makes this header row disappear. You can see it reappear when I select it right there. Next is the color of the header row and the color of the header text. So once again, let's take a look at that, where we've got the header row in this blue with the white text, and that gives it a nice header at the top of the stack. Next, we have the border. If you would like to provide a border around each piece of content in the stack, you can do so with a thickness size here with the slider. You can set a style for the border in this field, and then the color as well. You can also choose to only display the border at the bottom, and you can also choose to not display a background color. Unchecking that, checking the option for no background color would really make it a very basic table, as you can see here. Of course, if you do this, you might want to adjust your rollover, and we'll look at that in just a moment. Finally, we have options, assuming you want background colors, to set those colors here for even, odd rows, then the hover color, and the hover text. And speaking of the hover, you can choose to turn that off and disable it with the no hover option. And then finally, if you're going to be building a large table, then you might want to display the show sizing tips option. That places some more information at the bottom of the Power Grid stack, which talks about how to set the width of your columns in order to add content to those. Because as I mentioned, you can add not only a massive number of rows, but also within each row stack you can add a massive number of columns, and so up to 60, and you can see those stretched across the page here. And so you can really build some very, very large tables using the Power Grid stack, but it is very simple to set up and style without any coding knowledge whatsoever. And so that is the Power Grid stack from Joe Workman.